How's it going, everybody? This is Radishhead, and welcome back to another episode of Upland Analysis. Today we're going to be talking a bit about the LA release Fallout, just how it's impacted the market as a whole in Upland, taking a look at the high-level stats, drilling down a little bit to get an idea of what I think the picture will look like in the near future, and whether it's time to be buying or selling in Upland right now. But first of all, I wanted to give a congratulations to Abdullah. I'm sure you've heard the news. He is the first UpX billionaire in Upland, which is pretty exciting, I've got to say, just to be able to say that there is a person in Upland who has $1 million worth of assets in the game. And this number just seems to be going higher and higher. He's not selling, he just seems to be buying more. So I'm not sure if he knows something we don't, but the fact that this mega whale, Abdullah, seems to be even more bullish on Upland than I am, I don't know. Like, he seems to be very excited about the future of Upland, and when somebody with that much money says something about a game I'm invested in, I tend to listen. So that's my piece on that. And I guess while I'm talking about Wales, this of course is one of Abdullah's residences within Century City, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to his neighbour in Century City, who is Buster Worth, and he is the first CEO who has officially signed up to the Century Citizens node that me and a few other people have put together. And if you're not aware about Century Citizens, the idea is that we're trying to transform Century City neighborhood in Los Angeles into the most hyper-exclusive, well-developed playground for CEOs, basically, in Upland. So anybody who's worth 100 million UpX or more, you don't need to be a CEO to join Century Citizens. All you need to do is own a property in Century City and commit to holding on to it and only selling it to a chief executive and building it up. So you can see there's lots of people here who have already started building up lots of houses on their properties. I own a property which I'm going to put a skyscraper on it once skyscrapers come into the game, and it's only a small neighborhood, so I think it'll be really cool to see it all built up with, you know, probably lots of townhouses on one side, and this other side will probably have lots of skyscrapers because they have like big plots of land. So that's something exciting. I know that Century City is not accessible for the majority of you watching this video. It's quite an expensive place to be, but if you do have that money and you want to be part of Century Citizens, just reach out to me on Discord if you're not already. Right, that's enough about Century City and about Abdullah and the whales. Let's talk about LA and the property prices across Upland in the wake of its release, because there is no denying that the launch of LA has been a bit of a bomb on the prices across the metaverse, which makes sense because not only were there hundreds of thousands of very desirable properties which have just been launched onto the market, but a lot of those properties are actually really expensive as well. So there was no denying we were going to expect something like this, which is why I made that video a couple of weeks, maybe a week before the LA release, basically saying I've been slowly selling stuff for a while to get ready for LA, recommend you do as well. Hope some of you followed that advice, because if you did, you may have had more UpX to spend in LA. I've spent all of my UpX. I've gone from like 2 million to less than 50k, which really was a bit silly of me because I knew that there were going to be some really good deals on the secondary market, so I might have to pump more money into the game to take advantage of those, because there certainly are some really good deals. You can see here that the peak for most of the cities was about the 20th of January, which was the day before the LA announcement, which makes sense. And the prices in most of these cities were kind of dropping, and certainly after the LA release, they've dropped further. They could still go down further. I'm not saying this is necessarily a good time to sell, to take advantage of that, but historically, after collections are revealed, prices in some areas do drop. There's no denying that. So you've got to sort of balance out the the risk reward of staying in a place which you think could be a collection, but what if it's not a collection? Then the price might drop. So I've certainly fell victim to that in the past, and I want to get all that information out there. Some of the ones which stand out include Bronx. So if you want to get into the Bronx, might be a good time to do so. Fresno has seen a bit of a drop, although that 12,000 before the LA release I think was a bit of an anomaly, so it's not actually as dramatic as it looks, I don't think. Manhattan has been really quite a lot. It's gone from about 200,000 to about 160,000, so making a 40,000 saving there if you're buying now in Manhattan. If you don't own a single property in Manhattan and you're sitting on about 150, 160k, I think you could do a lot worse than grabbing a Manhattan property. There's not that many properties in the city. It's Manhattan. I feel like it's always going to be worth something. It's almost like the Bitcoin of Upland, right? If Upland does well, I think Manhattan does well. Oakland has certainly seen a bit of a drop, and I've seen that there's been some really good collection opportunities, especially in like Berkeley. The South Berkeley Limited Collection area, I saw properties selling there for like 15, 16k, which is ridiculously cheap for a limited collection in a tier 2 city. So there are plenty of opportunities in Oakland if you've got the UPIX to take advantage of it. And then possibly the biggest victim of all of the LA release was San Francisco. That might not be too surprising because obviously they're both tier 1 cities, both on the west coast, so there's quite a lot of overlap there. Looks like some people cashed out some San Francisco properties in order to mint up LA, which I can't really blame them for. I think San Francisco is looking pretty undervalued at this price, I've got to say. I think we'll see that back at 40k in the near future, and then it's going to go up from there, hopefully. There's some visuals, so you can see that orange line Bronx still sort of coming down from that high from when it was first released, I think, is part of that. I think it might have been a little bit overvalued anyway, and that's combined with the LA release. Manhattan, as you can see, I've put Manhattan on a separate, that's the blue line here, I put it on a separate axis, so it doesn't like look way above the others. But yeah, that's seen a pretty big drop. And even LA itself has actually seen quite a big drop. The floor price when South LA came out was about 9,000. I know that because I sold properties for about 9,000. The floor price now that we've had the North LA release is about closer to like 7,900, 8,000. So even LA itself has suffered somewhat in the LA release. That's how much UPIX it's drained out of the economy. People have no money and they want to sell to get money back. So that's the top level picture, but I like to break it down into individual cities. And this is a bit more time consuming. I think if one day I did set up a Patreon or something, I would release documents like this and I'd update them every few days so you guys could see some really good breakdowns by cities. Maybe when the channel gets a bit bigger I'll consider doing that. But for the moment, here is a Chicago document which I've been updating. I've got data on here dating back to October. I think it tells some really interesting pictures because I like to see not just the impact on the floor price for city, but also how it's impacting collection areas, because that's something which people care quite a lot about. There's usually more liquidity in collection areas as well, so it can give maybe a better explanation of what's going on. And it's actually these three columns which I really want to talk about, because that is basically December of last year, so not that long ago, but well before we had any news of an LA release. The 18th of January, which is just before we had the LA release, and then like today, after the nuke has been dropped on the Upland economy, which was called LA. And let's have a look. So I kind of already did a video like a few weeks ago about Chicago and how it was like breaking record highs. The floor price went from about 5k to about 9k. Look at all these collections. We had 15k to like the blue collections doubled in value in South Shore. I know that the exclusives went absolutely wild. Look at Gold Coast from 100k to 200k. Loop from 200k to 400k. Even the rares, Lakeshore Drive doubles. Wacker Drive isn't even on the market anymore. There is nothing in Weka Drive. So the middle of January was the absolute peak for Chicago, and let's compare it to now. So just a few weeks later, we've had the LA announcement, and then we had the LA release. So obviously the floor price has dropped to about 8k, which we could see in our top level chart before. South Shore, after going from 15 to 32, is now back to 20. West Town went from 20 to 34. It's now at 21. I would recommend that you pause the video if you want to get a good sense of how the market's kind of trended. I think the overall takeaway point is that in this like month and a bit between December 21 and January 22, I think Chicago was in a bit of a boom, and I think you could make that argument for a lot of the cities as well. There was just a bit of a rocket from December to January, and that's great. We had lots of new players joining, but I think it happened so quickly that there weren't really any opportunities to find like resistance levels in the price, or it was all just up. It never went down, and the second it starts going down, that's where we learn quite a lot of information about where the new kind of floor prices are. And I think this data that we're seeing here in February, I think this is closer to like a new floor price, which I think is really promising, because I tell you what, even though they're a bit of a drop from where we were in January, January was like an all-time high. Let's compare it to where we were in just a month earlier, towards the end of November. Suddenly, if we remove the January high, things are looking really good. The floor price, 5k to 8k. We've got some limited collections here. West Division Street, 55 to 75. And exclusives, Gold Coast, it's still doubled from where it was in December. Loop is still, 50% plus higher than where it was in December. All of this makes me think that we've found, not just in Chicago, but that is the city which I'm using for my example, I think that we've actually found a really sustainable floor. I think what we needed in Upland was a little bit of a correction. I think LA has provided the catalyst for that correction, and now everybody can take a bit of a step back and go, alright, so this is what the market looks like now. There's clearly some good deals on the market. How long do we think it's going to be before the prices go back to where they were in January and beyond? I genuinely think in a month's time I'm going to make another video like this, and I think we're going to be back to where we were in January. No guarantees, not financial advice, but I'm investing on the assumption that it's only going to take about a month before we're seeing prices back to where they were at the absolute peak, which is really exciting. And then we're just going to see price exploration from there, see how high we can go before the next major city inevitably has a little bit of an impact on the price. That's just the Upland cycle. A lot of you watching this may have never experienced a dip in Upland prices before if you joined towards the end of last year. Don't worry, I've been in 3 of these, and this isn't even the worst one. The one which happened after Staten Island came out, the Oakland price has crashed like more than this, and they recovered just fine eventually. So don't worry, we're in this for the long term. If you are interested in investing, dollars into Upland, this is a pretty good time to do it. As you can see from my data, prices are at lows that we haven't seen for a couple of months. But it's not all bad news, and quite frankly, I think it's healthy that the Upland economy has seen a little bit of a cooling off period. Let's see where it goes from here. I'm interested to keep an eye on it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me cover in the future, and until next time, I'll see you then.